Next presenter is Chigozie Offer, an African collection researcher. He's a passionate advocate focused on preserving and promoting cultural heritage and has developed a deep commitment to safeguarding stories as well as engaged cultural curation, contributing to various projects aimed at keeping local history alive. His core interests are memory and intangible heritage preservation, with a strong foundation in museum operations, collection management, and interpreting historical artifacts. Welcome to Chigozie.
Thank you, Kate, for that brief introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Chigozie and to present my ongoing research on critical analysis of interpretation and display of African arts at Syracuse University Ghosting Collection. So Ghosting Collection, they are collaborating with the SU Art Museum in some of their collections they have. So my case study here focused on Nigerian arts, the Benin Bronze. So before I embark on this research, I did a quick survey to ask students and community, university community, question regarding some of these collections, the Goldstein collection I have at the Shine Center. When you look at this response, you will see a lot of students, they are not aware such collections are there, and it actually gives that room for me to ask questions. Why do we have such collections there, and what are they doing, and what interpretation measures do they have, or what voice those collections have? So when you look at the question here, how has your understanding of African culture and history been influenced by the display at Syracuse University Shine Center? You will see one of the response put them in visible space, not just in the basement of Shine or somewhere people aren't given the instructions to really appreciate them. I haven't noticed any of the artifacts. Maybe I have not been to any African artifacts. African culture is dynamic because it speaks about our cultural heritage and our work life. So a lot of comments and opinions. So which actually will help us to understand the need why these collections need to be interpreted and also be displayed where people will appreciate them. They are not just a piece of aesthetic art, but talks about the cultural value of people. Next. So here is the overview of research, which is an ethnographical analysis interpretation of African art, specifically the Benin Bronze display at the Syracuse University Ghosting Collection and some museums in the United States. So the research actually brought about me visiting other museums in the States to see how they interpret these African collections in their space. So the research is focused on analyzing its presentation, contextualization, and the narrative constructed around it. Next. So the goal of this research is to serve as a navigational guide to scholars, research, museum establishment, and cultural interpreters, as well as interested lay individuals, to also identify areas for improvements in the presentation of African arts within university museum. So methodologies, we have different mixed method, approach, interview, and all of that. Next. So I also have this study question, which actually help to understand more about how the community, university community, engage with these collections. So what does the museum have in African art collections? What interpretative material accompany the artwork, not just having these artifacts. What are those materials? How do people kind of like engage with them? So these are the crucial questions the research is set to explore. So the literature review here, some European ethnographic classify the display of African material culture during the colonial era acquired by missionaries or colonial officials propagated an image of African culture as being primitive. And these people see Africa as land of darkness, as seen in Christine also 2024. So these are divergent opinions as how museums speak for other cultures, categorizing and displaying objects in ways that strip them of their cultural significance. African art has served as a medium for storytelling, spiritual connections, social identity, and political commentary. Museums are to engage with African communities and to address this legacy of colonial violence, fostering a more inclusive and respectful approach to African culture and heritage. So we all know most of this collection actually came through acquisition of slave trade, and this actually brought about us looking into repatriation, decolonization, and all of that. But this research is focusing on those material we have in our collections. How are we actually trying to interpret to give it the original context? Next. So we're going to be studying the Kingdom of Benin is perhaps best known for its impressive brass sculpture and plaques, which frequently depict rulers and their family. They are considered amongst the finest artwork ever produced in Africa. So, Benin is located in southern Nigeria. I don't know if any of us has been to West Africa, Africa. You need to travel this summer. So, occupied by the people, they are renowned for their rich cultural heritage and historical significance, particularly through the establishment of this Kingdom of Benin. So, when you look at this pictorial view we have in the slide, the first you see the Order of Benin, flag with two white gentlemen, and you see the second one, the Order of Benin with the guard, and also the third one, the wife of Benin and family. So we are not talking about the family right now, but just for us to see how this object is very, very deeply rooted in their culture, their family, and their life. So the Order of Benin serves as a symbolic and spiritual leader. So artifact representation. The Benin Bronze are not merely aesthetic creation, but it symbolizes the kingdom's legacy and influence. So the Benin Bronze embody the community tradition, their cultural heritage, serving as profound representation of its history, ancestral past, spirituality, and societal structure. These artworks were commissioned by Oba the king and were exclusive to the royal court. They adorn the palace and were integral to ancestral altars, symbolizing the Oba's divine rights to rule and his connection to past monarchs. So we actually understand this artwork is just not what we just see, or we keep it at a storage where people won't see it, or we need to give it that royalty. The little people, see how interesting these pieces connect with their spiritual lifestyle. So we also see here the interpretation of the object. I've been able to, have different comparison during my tour visit to different universities and museums here, and I tend to compare those collections they have, especially my focus on Benin Bronze. So the material today, we're looking at this particular object or collection is the main Benin Bronze we have in SUR, Golden Collection. So the artifact is crafted from bronze, primarily composed of brass, a copper zinc alloy. The craftsmanship, involved the build of Benin bronze casters called the Igun Erumohun. These young people or men, put up these technique together. And when you compare some of these collections, they are not like refined in the same measurement. You actually see the little deformation because they use their hands, to put all those pieces together. So the characteristics here, the one we have features an intricate detailed representation to show you that truly this is a Benin bronze. And the casting also involve different noticeable models to show you that it actually passed through the casting processes. Then we also look at the different color that is shining over here, the green and purple, which also show long oxidation that has occurred within the space, environmental exposure. So it's also explained that the collection we have in our Golden collection is the Benin Bronze, showing that this object is of great importance to African community. So these are some of the museums I've also visited and go through their digital archives to see some of these collections Benin Bronze they have. I've been to Harvard Art Museum, Peabody, and Museum of Fine Art, Boston, and also Smithsonian and National Museum of Natural History. Some of these other museums. I'll still visit them because this is still an ongoing research to also look into how they are interpreting this as objects and how they are preserving it as well. If these objects have the voice they should be, or would have a repatriating them. We never know where the conversation will lead us. Next. So this is a vast and ongoing research, and I cannot wait to see what comes out of it in the end. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Chagosium?
So I enjoyed your presentation. Just curious, what kinds of stories would you like to see in a digital archive?
Okay, that's very interesting question. For me, I would like to see stories that deeply connect with the originality of any African collection we have, and also to give it down where people will appreciate that. Because from what we have in clothing collection, where those African collections are being displayed, to be honest, anyone who is from African origin will feel like this is kind of like I don't know, trying to separate you from not being who you are, right? So we need even have an exhibition where these objects, people can have access to it, ask questions, interact with them, and also if there is need for us to repatriate, we have to take it back because when you look at the stories, I think I read Professor Andre, one of the professors who had about 400 collections in SU, and how he managed to collect those objects when he was working in Lagos State University, Nigeria. So imagine those collections. We have to ask whether it's through gift or through just maybe meeting people to pick those pieces because they are so aesthetic and beautiful. So when you have it in your collection, you have to make sure that you place it and give it the same value of where the artifacts you collected them from, the original place they came from, because these are people's traditions, this is their lifestyle, this is their voice, everything that has to connect with them belongs to those objects. So if we are putting those digital information about an artifact, let's be original and also acknowledge this community and be in touch with this community. It's very important.
Did you? I know.
Professor Raya.
Oh, shit.
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Maybe I did like to let you know that from Edo State.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, but because of deep spiritual connection to these things, it's so painful when you see them displayed somewhere. They are just displayed like just like an artwork, right? So I know the first time I saw those things I was emotional. I want to look at them very well, right? Because these are spiritual items to us, for we people, Edo people. You may see it as an object, as an art, but for us, it is spiritual, right? So I think giving them the proper respect they deserve is one thing we should do. And how do we do that? By representing them the way they should be represented, giving them their proper name, not just Benin Bronze. Benin Bronze is just a general categorization of what things are. When you see the video game, what does it mean? There are some, if you go back home, there are some of these artifacts that a woman should not touch. Based on our culture and everything, a woman should not touch some. There are some that a child should not touch. But you bring them to America and everybody just play with them. And so whenever I visit such places, you know what it means. So and then again, I think another conversation we should be able to have is how do these things how do they got to Syracuse? We are not having they are here, we are happy they are here, but we should know how they got here. Were they stolen? Were they part of the things that were stolen? Were they gifts? Because back in those days, these things are not sold. You don't sell them. Yeah. So the easiest place, so sorry for this is not the question. So back home, there's a particular what we plan that are in charge of making these sculptures. It's not just made by anybody. There are some that are made by just artisans who are skillful and they just do it for market purpose, but the spiritual ones, they are particular tribe particular clan that are in charge of it, right? So we need to understand and learn these things, and so that we can appreciate what they are and what they mean to other people. So I think I now have appreciation for the first, second, and third presentation, because sitting down, they are just like any other story. But now I didn't know Chiabuzi would presenting something. So I think I now understand what those things mean to those other people too, like the Native Americans. They are, but I now understand what it means to them. I think we should be able to learn to value history and value culture. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Maybe one more question.
Yeah, so this is not so much well, it's a question and a curiosity. Because the presentations that were done previously were done by researchers who I get the impression are researchers from outside of the communities that they are researching. You are an insider. So you are conducting research on your own people.
Yep.
It's a very unique position to be in. And I'm curious about your process in watching your people's art being colonized, commercialized, and maybe, even violated a little bit, because these are spiritual objects.
Yep.
And African culture is inherently spiritual. There's almost nothing that we do that isn't spiritual, including the creation of art. So I'm curious about your process as an insider researching and watching this and how that impacts you.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think the very first time I actually stepped into that particular display collections, I have this thing, like my brother just said, I was emotional. My professor here can actually attest to that. I have to reach out, like, this is what I think. I've always been there every week to kind of maybe speak to them if they can hear me. And that's what actually, brought about me trying as much as I can to put up this research. I already planned traveling back home, to meet with this community, not just to say I'm doing research, but talk to them and have a very deep conversation, because this is something that I'm speaking from my heart, not just as a scholar. So if I actually say something that actually the community will be proud of, that means I have actually made something great. So every information you see takes a lot of time, and that's why I have to travel to other, museum as well, to see how maybe their curator or their staffs also talk about this particular object. Because when we see how they put those things out, we kind of come back to my own research and know if I can actually write to them and say, hey, you need to stop. This is not the right way. From, like, I think 2 days ago, Museum of Boston actually pulled down their Benin Bronze display. I had to respond to that on LinkedIn actually to tell them I'm actually working on this. If there is any collaboration or information, to do more, kind of like get in touch, because this is where I came from and this is what I'm doing. So it's not just about getting the degree or try to be on Billboard to see that you're doing something on this, but kind of like speak where the voice is needed and say what actually it is supposed to be. Yeah.
Thank you so much.